Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Savvy Report. I'm Ernie Martin, founder and managing director of Receivable Savvy, where we provide research and best practice to help master the order-to-cash process. Today, we're speaking with Jim Taylor, Chief Executive Officer of MarineNet, LLC, an organization whose purpose is to facilitate the initiative on electronic business standards within the marine and inland waterways industry. And what we'll cover today is a little bit about the history that led to the creation of MarineNet, BargeX, and Jim's perspective on the future of EDI standards, e-business technologies, and more. So, hello, Jim, and welcome to the Savvy Report.
Good afternoon, Ernie. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, Jim. Thanks a bunch for joining us. And so your industry is unique. It's a bit interesting. And so tell us a little bit about MarineNet LLC and how it came to be.
Sure. A little quick segue about the industry though. We are a very narrow, so to speak, industry. A part of the supply chain that you'll never really hear about because the inland waterway industry, the barging industry, mainly moves bulk commodities such as agricultural products, petroleum products, and even down to mulch. So we're a very integral part. The industry is very integral to making steel or bringing fertilizer or, like I said, mulch to your garden or actually putting food on your table. So when you pass over a bridge within the interior of the United States and you look left and right, you'll probably see our industry represented not only on the bank, but also actively traveling on the river. So it's a very interesting industry. And like I say, it's the hidden part of the supply chain. Right. Given that being said, it's a very old and traditional industry, and basically the purpose of that in moving bulk commodity up and down the river, it's a very efficient industry. It takes a ton of trucks and rail cars off of the highway and railroad itself because we're able to move those bulk goods not only efficiently but also economically. There were several inland waterway companies, barging companies, that wanted to modernize and actually receive their invoices systematically. Right. So with that, for the traditional EDI method, where system-to-system communication, but we had to spin up our network to do that. So hence BargeX. Right. So in a long story short, they wanted to modernize, but adopting and getting that happening forced us to do a couple of things. One, we had to get standardized messages, invoices, and where's my barge, and what's the status of the commodity in the barge, and so on and so forth. Right. We had to get that lined out and come up with standardized messages for that. Right. We had a choice in doing that. We chose to affiliate and use the standard, the foundational standards of X12, okay, which is big in supply chain, also in other industries, along with healthcare, in the insurance industry, and property and casualty, and also again in the supply chain, rail, trucking, small package, and whatnot. Right. What we didn't do is adopt what's called X12 EDI, which is a transaction set type of EDI. What we did do is adopt the XML standard. So with that, we came out with standards not only for invoicing, but for, again, the status of the barge, the status of the commodity of the barge, the status of the boat, so on and so forth.
Right.
And of course, diagrams and whatnot that transmit mission critical information systematically. And then they can build up, take that data, build within a database, what we would call a cost database, and then adjudicate the payment for the events against the information coming in about those events. Right. So right. I hope that's pretty clear, but in a high level view, that's exactly now what we do. Okay. Is we facilitate that communication so that is done systematically on either end.
Okay, and very thorough answer, and thank you for tackling that. And so EDI, you mentioned the EDI component, where we live in an environment today where it's not just one-to-one, it's one-to-many. There are e-invoicing networks and so on and so forth. But from our perceptions analytics study, we show that EDI is still very prominent among not only suppliers, but the buyers that they engage with. I think the latest study we did in 2021 showed that of those who use electronic invoicing, the third-party e-invoicing network, 47% of those suppliers still use EDI. So there's a role that EDI has to play. And before we get too deeply into that, let me ask you about BargeX and how and why it was created and the service that particularly provides for customers.
Well, we provide a very secure three-corner network model. We developed that network within the industry because, again, acceptance within an industry that started out 15 years ago still using 3x5 cards and opening up the mail. Right. 3x5 cards represents a barge or a tow, and then they track that, and then they bill off of that. They go, oh, okay, we've done this event, this event, this event, this event, which could be a product. So we did this service, this service, this service on that barge. They roll up the charges. They put it in a spreadsheet. A lot of them, you still used Excel at that time, or Lotus 123, quite frankly, a blast from the past. Absolutely. And then go from there. Now they've and these guys are small service providers that they're considered small business, not small to medium size. They're really on the small business side. A staff of about 20. When we first started out with this initiative, basically they were running their whole operations on an 8088 type computer system. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, long story short, I walk in and they're still booting up their computers on floppy disk, seriously, and then moving forward from there. So it was a big jump to Windows 7, so to get them moving forward. Right. But we did, and now today, with that being said, we've got them on platforms that are able to communicate. And then again, not only give the events, but then be able to bill. And I mean, I guess the most basic platform they bill from would be QuickBooks, right? And then or moving up to Great Plains or Microsoft Dynamics from that. So I mean, they're able to move forward technology-wise, but the connectivity was a challenge. So we simplified the connectivity for them. We spun up our network to do just that. And MarineNet runs that network now, along with providing the standardization and keeping those standards current. Right. To securely, and that's another big thing, especially in the days today. How do we maintain the security and the confidentiality? We call it right to know or need to know, right to share type of information. So that's where we are today.
Okay. Okay. And excellent. Again, thank you for thoroughly clarifying that and answering and shedding some light on I guess the solution you guys bring to the table for your particular industry. And so let me ask you about EDI specifically. And so it's been around for decades, and it's solidified as a very reliable method of exchanging business documents between suppliers and their customers. EDI's ability to connect organizations using one-to-one platforms has been proven to be great for some, somewhat limiting for others. But tell us your sense of EDI today and what you think the future holds for it, specifically for your industry, but also maybe beyond your industry.
Well, the thing is, again, being in supply chain, we happen to touch and come in contact with various industries. So the petroleum industry would one.
Right.
So you have PIDEX, which does the standards, and you have OFS Portal, which then provides the networking services for the U.S. petroleum industry.
Mm-hmm.
We want to touch that industry. Okay, for them to subscribe to into our network or us into their network, we have to then branch out from us a three-corner, what you would call a three-corner network, which we provide that network from supplier to us to the buyer, right? So those are the three corners. But to approach the petroleum industry, there has to be another corner in there. So we need to then establish connection through our Bargex network into their OFS Portal network.
Right.
Therefore, that becomes a four-corner model.
Right.
Well, that has, some people would say challenges. I call that opportunity. Mm-hmm. We have the opportunity now to trade because we do move petroleum product. And with that petroleum product, we have the opportunity to then connect into their established network. Mm-hmm. And so all of their customers, which are the commodity owners that we're pushing these products of, right, they then don't have to change their back-end systems.
Right.
Bargex to OFS Portal in this direct example, mm-hmm, will then come to an agreement and establish a connection and a standard where we are able to map or translate and map data, right, from our standards into their standards and move forward. Right. This interoperability is key to the future of EDI. Yeah. We cannot be married to one specific standard. We have to be able to be that translator to adapt to other established standards that are out there. Right. I think that is the next step. And actually, to be quite honest, this is being done today, mm-hmm, but there's no standard communication and invoicing, right, between what the service I'm providing in the inland waterway industry to the service OFS Portal is providing for the petroleum industry. Right. And to force the buyer or the service provider, mm-hmm, and the buyer of those services, to force them to now change to a new standard after they've invested millions, time, sweat, equity, material, and treasure into their current standards, to ask them to do that, that's a big mountain to climb. And I think is a bit unreasonable, mm-hmm, where we could mitigate and navigate that for them and provide that standard of quality service in a secure, confidential method. And I think that's the way it should be. Right. So we're looking at that opportunity. And I think that's the way forward as we navigate from a three-corner to a four-corner model.
Right. Well, Jim, you've effectively answered my next question that I had regarding how EDI specifically plays in that three-corner and that four-corner configuration. So you've already answered the question, so great. So I don't have to ask that. But let me follow your answer with another question generally around EBusiness Standards, the benefits, opportunities, as well as the potential shortfalls. And you mentioned that it's a big mountain to climb. And so, in your opinion, where does interoperability finally live? Does it live in cultivating sort of what you and your organization has done in terms of allowing the integration to various parts through what you've built, and that sort of becomes in a model in a segue to interoperability? Or is it creating an overarching new standard for everyone, where there's sort of pain points spread across different industries, across different players? Sort of, what's the way forward in your opinion, or what's the likely way forward?
Well, so, there's always a cost benefit. And we need to see where the effective cost benefit is.
Right.
Okay. So let's look at language translation. Let's take it out of the EDI world and let's put it into language translation.
Right.
So we're all in one big group, correct?
Right.
And you speak French, I speak Latin, somebody else speaks German and whatnot. You have to have the translators in the middle that do a couple of things and do them well. Mm-hmm. One, understand the two languages. Two, understand the nuances of the two languages, right, or multiple languages. And three, not only understand the nuances and the voice inflection. And I could speak a Cyrillic language and come across as pounding my fist on the table, and I'm actually saying I love you. Okay. All right. And I may be speaking French, which, in that romance language, right, you say I love you in a very soft tone. Mm-hmm. They both mean the same thing, right, but somebody's got to translate that to take that rough Cyrillic to a now romance type language and soften that to come out correctly. Mm-hmm. We do that in the middle, in the network and the service. We should be able to do that. And quite frankly, we're undergoing an effort today, and I'm seeing that where we're getting contributions from leaders, EDI, business data standards, mm-hmm, leaders, to help facilitate the service providers that provide network services. Right. And they're doing that incredibly well. And we should be able, as a service provider, whether you're providing network and EDI services for the service provider or network and EDI service for the buyer, okay? And they're now being able to translate the data needs from the service provider and take that syntax for the data within that data and translate it into the receiver's syntax, okay? But not at that service provider level. I'm sending, if I'm doing for the supplier, I'm sending Cyrillic, mm-hmm, over to the French guy, mm-hmm, who is softening that up. And when I pound on the table and say, I love you, they're hearing that nice, mi amor, right, type language on the other end, but getting the data they need. Right. And being able to adjudicate that invoice, and I'm speaking invoices specifically here, timely, within terms, accurately, and being able to match that up to the service or product that was provided, right, within their data needs. Right. And that's where I see this not only going, I see this as in the future. So these access points, as I'm now going to call them, okay? Yep. Servicing the service provider, servicing the buyer, right, those two disparate access points now are acting like UN translators and doing it accurately. Again, I'm going to be pounding on this, so I apologize if it gets a bit much. Right. Accurately, securely, to those having the right to know and the need to share, because that it needs to be in a secure, confidential environment. And these access points are providing that, not only today, but looking at new technology and newer, how we can make that standards and fit in that new technology for the future.
Right, right. Excellent. Well, Jim, thank you for clarifying that and for sort of adding your perspective on what direction you think this will ultimately go and really where it should go. And so we've sort of run out of time, unfortunately, but I want to thank you again for joining us. Those tuning in were able to learn more about your organization, Jim, and how developing EBusiness Standards plays an important role in your industry, but also other industries outside yours as well. And you can find more information about MarineNet LLC by visiting www.marinenetllc.com. And thank you, everyone, for joining me and my guest, Jim Taylor, on this episode of the Savvy Report. I'm Ernie Martin, and we'll see you next time.